and welcome to another episode of Unturned Stones. Today I'm going to be interviewing Joey Nielsen, somebody else that I met through Winter's Edge. Well, coincidentally, I actually worked with him at ATC for a short period of time before I left that company. So just to start out the interview here, would you kind of tell people a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your past?
Yeah, I guess born and raised north central Iowa. Kind of moved to a few different places after that and ended up, living in Colorado for a little bit and back to Iowa and now out here in Wisconsin.
Okay. And what do you currently do for work?
So I design transmission lines, little substation stuff too, but yeah, a lot of people confuse it with automotive transmission lines, but actually it's, big overhead stuff, which obviously.
Yeah,
So,
people call the front desk and ask about automotive transmissions all the time, and the front desk ladies would always talk about how they'd have to
yeah.
nope, not the transmission we do.
Yeah, when I first found the job posting online, that's what I thought it was, automotive transmission.
Yeah.
Until I actually researched the company and realized I was completely off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so which part of Iowa did you grow up in?
So very north central. If you went up Interstate 35, just off of Interstate 35, right, almost at the Minnesota border.
Okay.
Clear Lake, Mason City area. Forest City, Iowa is actually the town I'm from. So.
Forest City. Okay. And kind of can you talk a little bit about your childhood? And you can kind of start however you'd like, and I'll take it, from where you say. I'll kind of dig in there a little bit deeper. But just kind of generally speaking, give a little bit more background about your childhood growing up in Iowa.
Yeah. Guess at first we grew up, pretty small house, pretty, I guess I'd say we didn't have a lot of money, pretty poor. The town itself wasn't exactly the richest town in the world, but it did have a few rich people in it too. So where I'm from is where they make Winnebago motorhomes.
Oh.
So it's a big factory town.
Okay, yep.
I'd say the factory takes up half of the town, and then, more than 3/4 of the people either worked at Winnebago or had worked at Winnebago. So it's just, a lot of factory stuff. Everybody's worked there. I'd say I worked there in the summers, and I worked there after college, and, all my friends would work there in the summer. That's the town, big factory town. So,
Okay.
yeah, so growing up, everybody I knew, their dad worked there, in the factory itself kind of funded the town, I guess, for lack of a better term, and built a lot of the housing.
It's a pretty small
Well,
town in the
that's
sense that everybody knew each other.
Pretty much.
Especially
It wasn't very often you ran into somebody you don't know. And yeah, I was just back this last weekend, and yeah, so ran into plenty of people I know.
everybody just knows everybody's business, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it's a little different now, I think, than it used to be. 'Cause the town's kind of changed. Winnebago's kind of changed. So it's a little bit different than it used to be. It's still a small town. It's just now there's more. A lot of people have moved away and different people have moved in. So it's not as, I don't know what you'd want to call it, basically where everybody is kind of born and raised there now. It's just kind of, they get a lot more people from other towns too now.
Okay. So kind of a little bit more on family and home life. Were your parents both around?
Yes and no. So I still have the same mom that I've had since, they gave birth to me. And at the time, early on, my biological father was there. I'm adopted now by my dad. So yeah, my biological dad was kind of in and out. Not exactly the greatest human being all the time. So I know he did some time, did a lot of stuff he shouldn't have. So yeah, I'd say he was around, but it would have been better to not have him around probably.
So you feel like almost more of a negative influence in your life to have your biological father around than any type positive, or if there was a positive, it was completely overshadowed.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, I can't. It could just be my memory too. My memory does suck, but I don't really remember any positives from him being around. There could have been some. I just remember any of them.
So your mom got remarried since, when you were born, she was with your biological dad at the time. She's been remarried. And now you have a stepdad that you do refer to as your father, it sounds like.
Well, no. So my adoptive dad is who I call dad. I mean, he's my dad. He's obviously the one I know best and who did all the dad work, So, he's my dad. So when I'm talking, if it comes up in this conversation where when I say my dad, I mean the dad that adopted me. If I have to say biological dad, that's the dad I'm talking about. That's just how I've grown up. That's how I say it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So your biological dad, at what age do you remember him kind of not like, because he must have been around for some period of time before he wasn't around consistently anymore.
Yeah.
What age was that? Where like maybe like I'm guessing your mom and your biological dad had separated.
Yeah, at some point. I know he doing some time. I can't remember if the divorce happened then or not. But my best guess is like maybe that 6 range plus or minus a year or two, it's, when you're that little, everything kind of just seems like it was the same year.
Yeah.
But, and I don't think I've ever actually asked my mom exactly how old I was, to be honest with you. I just kind of remember a few things, then just wasn't there anymore. So.
And you have siblings?
Yep. I have 2 older sisters. One's 4 years older than me and the other one's 5.
Okay. So when you were 6, they were probably like, 11, 12 years old?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So they probably had a little bit more impact from your dad, because was he their biological dad as well?
Yes. My youngest sister, yes. My other sister, no. So technically my oldest sister is kind of my half-sister, but she's my sister.
Do they have negative memories of him as well? Kind of negative impact?
I think so. I guess we don't talk about it a lot. I've seen when we were younger, we did this thing. I think at the time, it was called Adolescence. But it might have been called something else. It's kind of where kids go when you have parents that were, I guess, either drug abusers or alcoholics. And I remember them drawing some pictures of some of the more bad stuff that happened. So I'm sure they remember a lot better than I do.
Okay.
I can just kind of piece some things together, but I don't think that well. But I know they remember better than I do. So.
But generally speaking, you guys don't talk about it. Like your mom won't talk about it.
It's not that anybody won't talk about it, I don't think. My mom's always been very honest about stuff like that, which is good, I think. Just to be honest about it. I just never pried. I never really asked. It's just not my personality to kind of dwell on it. Some pretty bad stuff happened and just know it happened, Wasn't upset that it happened to me. Was kind of upset, about it happening to the people around me, but, nothing I can do about it. And I guess I've just never talked to my sisters that much about it, to be honest with you.
Was he abusive with your mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because you just kind of hit on the fact that, like, for you, you didn't dwell on the fact that it happened to you, but that you were kind of more upset it happened to people around you. So, like,
yeah,
as a little kid, you're kind of like protective. Were you like protective of your mom and your sisters?
Yeah, I've still, I guess, got quite a protective nature about myself. And, a lot of it might come from that. My guess is that, yes, it does. Or it was just part of my personality, too. It's hard to say for sure. But, yeah, I think I've definitely got a protective nature about myself.
Almost like maybe when you were little, did you have like an influence of thinking you had to be the man of the household?
Yeah, there was a lot of times where I thought that, I kind of took that on. Even with my dad around for a few years, and then they got divorced. And, not long later, my mom got remarried again. So even with my stepdad around, I still felt like, that I had to watch over my sisters more. Yeah. Because I was, I guess for lack of a better term, closer with them than like my dad or stepdad was, just because I've been there longer, almost by default. I was more responsible for them, which, I wasn't, but
Yeah.
I certainly felt like I was, so there was a lot of that and a lot of being protective of them as I got older through, middle school and high school. When you start maturing more, you think you're tougher. So I always would, protect them or, fight with people I thought that were.
Did you feel like they took that well? Did they like that you wanted to play that role for them in their life? Or did they look at you as our younger brother and, hey, you're quit being silly? Like,
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think maybe one sister probably thought that just crazy of me to think, and the other one maybe appreciate it. It's hard to say for sure. I don't, I guess we've never talked about it, and I'd hate to give out their opinion without asking them. But I think it's probably 1 and 1 would be my guess.
Okay.
But yeah.
So then at what age did your adoptive father that you now call dad come into your life?
I don't think it was too long after. So probably, I'm guessing, another year later would be my guess. Like I said, I hate that at that age, I just can't remember exactly when things happened. I wish I knew more, about that, which I guess I should ask since I wish I knew. But yeah, I don't think it was very long after.
Okay.
Because we were still in the same house and stuff when they got together.
So how was that for you?
It was good. I like my dad a lot. I love him. He did everything he could to, help us quite a bit. And my grandparents, his parents, helped a lot too. And so it was nice to have this nice group of family, because I don't recall with my biological dad ever any aunts or uncles around or grandparents. I just don't recall it. I don't think they were around ever. Because like I said, I don't think they talked to my biological dad at all. So it was nice. It was nice to have a community. And my dad was from my hometown too. So, he knew people. Everybody knew him. He was a good guy. Had some things he was going through at the time, but never was mean to us. Never, always treated myself really well.
So that transition of him becoming a part of your life was a relatively easy one, not one that was a rocky road or anything.
No.
Because he came in, he was a good example, a father figure.
Yeah.
Kind of sounds like a good example of a man. Just.
Yeah. No, he did. He was good. It was great to have him around for sure. I really appreciate, him adopting all 3 of us and, helping take care of us, especially at that stage of your life, It's nice to have somebody around, somebody who kind of gives a shit and stuff. It's definitely helped, and I think for I shouldn't say every, but for every guy, it's good to have some sort of father figure around, especially when that can set a good example, I guess.
Yeah, I think as much as a mom can sometimes try to provide that masculine energy in a household, especially for a boy in a household, a man or a father it's much easier for them to fill that role.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's just, bred into us. And it's not that a mom can't do that, because my mom still did a pretty good job at the times where it was just us. But yeah, I think it definitely helps. Just like vice versa. The girls, I think it's good to have a good female example too. I think it just helps. It's bred into us the way it is.
So how would you describe your relationship with your mom through all that time? Obviously there was you were protective.
Yeah.
Were you guys and you also met him, the fact that she was always very honest with you guys about stuff. She didn't try to hide stuff with you, especially maybe if there was abuse with your biological father and her, and it sounds like he had drug problems that she probably, whether you saw it directly or she informed you about it if you talked to her about it.
Yeah.
How was just your interpersonal relationship with her?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm pretty close with my mom. And I do think that her always being really honest helped a lot. I think had she tried to hide stuff from us, and I think you get that resentment. If there's things you probably should know and don't know and somebody kind of kept from you, I think just in general, I don't think that's good for a relationship. So yeah, her being honest definitely helped a lot. And she's always been there. She's not like ever not really been there to help any one of us out, you know. It's definitely one of her strengths. She's always been there to help us, or just been there, period. So it's always been pretty good, I think. I don't think we've ever really had any major issues.
So this is kind of like an arch here, but like, do you see how like your relationship with your mom could have played into like relationships with other women like in your life? So like partners that you've had, you're currently married, so like your current one, like how that, you know, do you see any like similarities there?
I think some of them would just be being as open as possible, I guess, and just not really trying to hide anything or lie about anything. I feel like I've always been fairly honest with people, you know, sometimes to a detriment. You know, some people don't always want or need to hear the truth. But I feel like that's kind of how I've always been, and maybe that's why. It's just, at least I think, fairly truthful all the time. Sometimes brutal. Yeah, but, you know, I think it's just, and I think that helped my wife and I's relationship too. It's just trying to communicate more, forcing ourselves to communicate more, especially if there's something, you know, that might be upsetting to the other person as you try to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. So when you're young, you mentioned there was like, I don't know, what was the name of that program that you guys?
I think it was Alateen. Yeah.
Where it's like a program for teens who have like struggles at home, whether it was with parents who were alcoholics, or abusers.
So my dad, the one that adopted me, is he had some struggles with alcoholism for a little while. I hope he doesn't mind me saying. I don't think he would. So kind of when he came into the picture, we started going there. It was this little, it's now the police station, I think, but this little building in Forest City where you'd go, and my sisters and I would go, and there were some other kids there and stuff too. And I think your parents were off in another room having their meetings, and we were kind of with Sister Mary, I think was who it was. And she would kind of sit with the kids, and we'd talk about stuff. And I think occasionally some maybe therapists or something. You know, this was the 80s, so who knows how, you know, what it really was. If his therapist or just
like a counselor,
some dude counselor, or something that came in and they would talk over stuff with you. You could definitely see there was, I think my sisters and I handled a lot of the stuff pretty well, but you could see where there was kids whose parents were not handling it well, and the kids weren't handling it well either. You know, there's definitely some more troublesome kids than what we were. But, I mean, we still probably got a lot out of it.
So you liked the program? You liked going to it?
Yeah, as far as I can remember. And I don't know if it's because I got free root beer when I was there, but
yeah.
As a kid, I was like, oh, popping candy. Yes, please. So I'd show up all the time. But, yeah, I think it was, as much as I can remember. And I remember, like I said, that Sister Mary lady, she was super sweet, super nice. So, good to have some, you know, positive adults around, I guess.
So did they like ask you guys to talk about emotions and how to handle emotions?
I don't remember a lot about it, to be honest with you, but I think so. I like that picture thing. I specifically remember that because one of the pictures of my sister was pretty upsetting to me. But yeah, I would think if you got to that stage of like drawing those pictures, there was definitely somebody there talking through feelings and stuff with you. But I think, like I said, I think some of the other kids probably needed more than us and got a little more attention than us, which was fine. We were doing okay, or as okay as we could be. So I think it was a good program, and I think it still exists. And I don't know if it was called Alateen at the time, but it might have been. I think it's changed names. Okay.
Dude, like, how old were you when you like attended this? How long did you attend it?
I think it was just a year or two, maybe. That. Um, that's all I can remember. Just maybe a year worth or so.
Okay. And like what age?
Probably that same, like, 7 plus or minus, you know.
You're pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So then like getting into your teenage years and stuff, even like progressing into high school, did you find yourself like having any mental health problems from, any of the things that happened in your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, whether it was from my childhood or whether it wasn't, I think there's some family genes that have definitely gone through the years too that have had something to do with it. But yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but through a lot of high school, had depression. I was kind of, I guess, diagnosed with that later on, like in high school. I didn't know, and then kind of as I talked with a therapist, she's like, "Yeah, you definitely did when you're in high school." And I had depression through high school, and I had one incident of like PTSD, I guess, as I was going through it and stuff. So, like, I just didn't know, and that's the shitty thing about being a teenager is there's so much stuff you just don't know. You don't know if you're feeling these weird feelings because, you're going through puberty or your brain's developing, or if you actually have depression and stuff like that. So it's hard to know. And especially, so it would have been 90s when I was going through high school, and there still wasn't a lot out there for people to know what was going on. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of struggles internally. I don't know if anybody outside of me knew what was going on. So I think I hid it pretty well. But yeah, definitely there for sure.
What kind of outlets did you have? Or do you remember?
So like, definitely hanging out with my friends. I hung out with my friends a lot. I have a good core group of friends and still have the core group of friends. We still get together once a year and we still talk all the time. So a lot of that was coping. But the coping I was doing was, almost, for lack of a better term, almost ignoring it and just hanging out with your friends and having fun with your friends. And then we played basketball a lot. Running, I did a lot of running in high school, which I think helped. Exerting yourself physically, I think, helps too, and just get you up and out. So, yeah, I think my friends helped a lot, and definitely staying active helped a lot too.
So socializing was like a very big thing for you.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not like when you got into depressive episodes or,
Yeah,
obviously didn't recognize them as depressive episodes at the time, but maybe in hindsight, they could have been, you didn't just self-isolate and kind of just really, pull into yourself and not talk to anybody. You'd reach out, you'd talk to friends, and obviously not go to saying there's a problem because you didn't recognize there's a problem at the time, but you just had fun with them, and that was kind of your way of getting through it.
Yeah, and I had friends that, were going through stuff too. So I think everybody was just kind of there for each other. And I guess some of the other stuff I did was I really kind of, hit the books pretty hard. I remember 7th grade. So this is my old coworkers give me a lot of shit about this, but called me a former genius. Because like in 7th grade, there's some tests in Iowa you take, and I aced them all. And so I took my like ACTs in like 8th grade and did pretty well on them and stuff. So like through high school and through the late parts of middle school, I like really hit the books hard. So it was like I was always distracting myself with something, and I got really into math, and because I just wanted to sit there and try to figure something out, and so that helped. So a lot of my depression was just not dealing with it was finding something else to do. So I was always busy, and I like to this day, like I still like I don't like sitting still for a long time until it's like the end of the day. But
like you have an overactive mind, like it always wants to.
Yeah, I've always got to be doing something, otherwise I start getting in my own head.
Okay,
and I don't like it, so I just go find something to do.
So how did that progress into like post high school for you?
So, yeah, right after high school, it was kind of difficult because I had taken a year of college in my senior year, and then it was just kind of went to, okay, I had to move out from my mom's because at the time it was just the two of us living in the house, and she and got an apartment, so I had to find a place to live. And then it got kind of overwhelming, so then I really got in my own head because I just didn't know how to do a lot of stuff, which some of the struggle is good to have, but some of it it just wasn't the right time for me to have to do something because I just didn't know. So I had to figure out, how to pay your electric bill, get your phone bill, and all that stuff. And some of it finding out the hard way. So I had quite a bit of stress, and I think that didn't help, So I kind of really got into myself, and I don't know if I just was born with my dad's temper or just pressure, like the depression, anxiety was getting to me. And sometimes, yes, if my anxiety gets high, I get really pissy. And so I would be angry a lot. I was always mad at myself. I never really I would yell at people and stuff like that. But most of it was just at myself. I was just mad at myself. So I'd punch a wall because, dropped a wrench or something when I was working on the car or something, just dumb young guy shit where you're not placing some of the stuff in the right, spot. You're just being mad for the sake of being mad.
It was like another outlet of your mental health was to express anger.
Yeah.
And obviously, yeah, a lot of guys I think in their younger 20s, that is how we deal with mental health problems, whether it's anxiety or depression.
Yeah.
Is we do just we want to punch something. We want to yell. We want to.
And you almost think it's normal.
Yeah.
Because every other friend of yours is doing it, so you think it's normal. And it's not. But you think it is. And also the alternative is pretty expensive. Going, especially when I was at that age, I didn't know you could go to therapy and stuff like that. And then if I did, I would have been able to afford it.
Yeah.
Especially at that time, there was no mental health benefits at all. So it kind of sucked at that age because there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Unless you have some sort of support and you go to somebody else and say, could you help me out with this? So, and at that age, I certainly wasn't going to do that. Tough guy on my own, I could handle it myself, which I wasn't handling it well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say right after that, it was pretty stressful, and I was in a relationship at the time, and she was a year behind me in school, and then, so I took my year of college, and then she was moving, and so then I ended up moving to the same place. It was all foreign to me, and I had to kind of figure that out, and where I moved to. I was just adding more stress to it, making my temperament worse, and
so did that relationship last much longer?
Not a lot longer, maybe another year or so or two. And it wasn't a really great one anyway. We were just very different, and I was very it was probably when my depression was the worst. And I'd say she's a pretty positive person, so it was just I think, at first you think you balance each other out, but then after a while, it's, no, you're too different, and it was just causing a lot of friction. And
yeah.
And I was just in a bad spot, and I shouldn't have been concentrating on anybody else. I should have been concentrating on myself. And that's part of the hard part of, in my opinion, being in a relationship when you're young, a serious one isn't really that good of an idea, at least just in my opinion. But I think you've got to spend more time concentrating on yourself and getting yourself figured out.
No, I don't disagree. I think you can kind of get caught up looking for somebody else to make you happy, especially as a relationship gets serious, and now you're looking for any little high of that they can give you, in the sense of they tell you they love you, they make you feel special, whatever. And as it gets more serious, you really start to rely on that person to make you happy instead of focusing on doing things for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, I totally agree with that.
So then how you mentioned moving to Colorado. So
Yep.
Was that shortly after that period of time?
Yeah, so after that was dating myself here, but that was 9/11 hit, and then all of a sudden everything kind of started crashing, and I had a job right after school. I worked as an auto tech for a little while until I could find a job in my line of work, and I was designing some automotive repair parts, and then 9/11 hit, and everything just sank. So half the company got laid off, and that included me. And so then I was like, oh shit, because I had broken up with my girlfriend. There was a couple deaths in the family that were really just affecting me, and my depression was bad. Then I had some friends that said they were moving to Colorado, and I asked if I could go with. I guess, thank God they said I could, because that helped a lot. Was I got out of where I was at, went somewhere else and was able to bond with my friends and have some fun. So I kind of got out of my own head a little bit. So I'm glad they did that.
How long were you in Colorado?
It was a year and a half. It's not a long time. Just kind of went, spent whatever savings I had until then, because Colorado's not a cheap place to live. It's not an easy place to find a job. Yeah. It was just, it was expensive, but we had a lot of fun. It was a good reset, I think, for me. And then after that, back to Iowa, because I realized, gotta go get a real job. Start saving up some money.
Okay. Now, so like you mentioned, you grew up a little poor household. I relate to that because I definitely grew up in a poor household, and I've always had the survivalistic sense to me about everything I do, how I spend money, how I save money. Do you feel like that affected you as well in that same way growing up, and how it affected you into your adult life?
Yeah. I think it affected me in both ways, because I can be pretty conservative with some items, like food. I'm on to eat it all, before, because we were kind of, I forget what the term is now, but didn't always know what we were going to eat and when and stuff like that. And then, but I'm also kind of wasteful with it too, because I'm also I'm going to die. I always have this thing in my head I'm going to die. And I don't like that I have that, but I've always just had it. And so I'm I have that Corvette, and I'm I got to buy this thing because I always said I was going to get one. I'm I'm not going to die before I get one. So I could be wasteful at the same time that I'm trying to hoard everything too. So if you ever look in my shop at the house, I still have items I've definitely hoarded because I think I'll need them again. And not bad hoarding, but I have old nuts and bolts just in case.
Yeah.
Dumb stuff like that. But then in other things, I'm really wasteful. So I kind of go a little bit back and forth. I still walk around the house and turn all the lights off. It's costing me, a penny that day because it's all LED stuff. But I'm turn the damn lights.
There's nothing better than using an old thing that you hoarded in your garage for a long time, and you finally found the right use for it.
Oh, that's
so
why coming to the gym helps, because Kirk always needs a nut and bolt because somebody's breaking something.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got that at the house. I'll bring it in tomorrow.
I had this IKEA bed thing where it's multiple pieces of wood that had a cloth, 2 strips of cloth. It's you could put the mattress and not have a box spring.
Yeah.
And I saved all those pieces of wood because it was from both sides of the bed, and it was a bunch of these single pieces of wood. They're 1 inch thick, maybe less than that, and 2.5. Saved them for 7 or 8 years. My wife kept giving me crap about the fact that I moved them, and then one day I was I need to build a dog fence that I can close and open it so I can close off our driveway. I was I know exactly what I'm going to use. Use those pieces. Oh my God. It was the most gratifying feeling to use those pieces of wood.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Always chasing that high. Yeah.
Exactly.
I've definitely been there. It's pretty fun.
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of ask a little bit more then about your marriage. When did you meet your wife?
So I met her, I'm going to have to do math, mid to late 20s, probably late 20s.
Okay. And right now you're 40?
29.
29, of course. 40,
no,
29.
Yeah, 40, 29. 42.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I was probably at 27, 20. Yeah, I mean, I'd finally gotten in a little bit better spot in life. I was figuring a few things out, and then I met her. Yeah, we kind of hit it off right away. I guess I don't know if you should say, but I actually met her at my ex's going away party. Um, yeah, and we just kind of started there. Went out, on a couple of dates after that, and she just kind of kept going. I think we get along pretty well. She's a huge smart ass. I've heard that I'm a smart ass. I don't know if I believe, but yeah, we got along pretty well right away, and yeah, it all just kind of clicked and fell into place. Because those guys was like, and no offense to my mom, but after seeing like her be married, I don't know, 3-4 times, was like, maybe marriage just isn't for me. And so that's why I went for a long time without ever being in a serious relationship again and stuff. And then ran into her, and then you realize, oh, it's not that the example that was set for you. It's just you got to find the right person.
Yeah.
And just allow yourself to, I guess, fall for the right person,
You guys have how many kids together?
2.
2 kids.
Yep. My son is 20. He'll be 21 pretty soon. My daughter is 11.
And is your son from a prior relationship?
Yes. So he's adopted by me.
Okay.
I think was 5 when we met. So yeah, I adopted him a couple of years later.
Was that like a very meaningful thing for you, from the fact that you had an adopted father that really became your dad to you, that like to have adopted him and kind of have that connection?
I think so. I guess sometimes I don't think about stuff that much like that, but yeah, I see what you mean. I definitely could understand how he felt. So I think that helped.
You could relate.
Yeah, for sure. I think you could relate. Similar situations. I feel like I maybe knew, like what he was looking for in a father and stuff, maybe a little better because I had kind of been through the same thing. Yeah, I think that probably played a good part in it for sure.
And how's your relationship with him? How was it, from adopting him and through the years, and how is it now?
Yeah, it was pretty good. And I don't think he's going to mind me talking about this. He's pretty open about it, but he had some struggles in high school a few years back. A good couple of years where he had got depression and anxiety and was having panic attacks and stuff and just kind of wasn't making the right choices. And I think some of the experience that I had before, I could see it in him. And my thought was, I could help him out more because I had been through some of the same stuff and talk it through. But I think, with some young people, and just in certain cases, sometimes there's just not a lot you can do. I realize that because you'd see like parents, why can't that parent, take care of their kid or get kid to act right? And once you go through it yourself, you realize there's like nothing you could do. Like, you can't and shouldn't beat your kids and stuff, and like you can't. You're not like a qualified therapist. You can't like. And even when you go through some of the therapy family sessions, stuff like that, like sometimes there's just nothing you can do. Their brains are developing. There's so much hormonal crap going on that there's just, you kind of have to just wait it out. And that's what we did. And he's doing really well now. He got through it, and I'm pretty proud of him. He's got, he had a hard time getting through high school, graduated, and now he's got a pretty decent job. He's welding and stuff. He's doing a good job, so I'm pretty proud of him for getting through all that stuff. It took a lot of effort on his part, a lot of effort on our part too, but we got through it. He's doing good now, so
you're pretty close with him.
Yeah, I was just back this weekend. He came it was for a car show thing, and he did the cruise with me and stuff. Yeah, we had a good time. And then he'll be 21 soon, so might be going back for that too.
An extra good time there.
Yeah, just to make sure, because my friend and my sister will really abuse him, so
And then, like, comparatively, how is your relationship with your daughter? Being younger, being a girl compared to a boy.
Yeah, really close with my daughter. I think that, not always, but I think that fathers and daughters and mothers and sons thing is pretty relevant. Like, I'm really protective of my daughter, but I'm also like good friends with her too, I think. And we hang out a lot. She comes here to the gym with me a lot. Yeah, she's pretty open. She talks a lot of stuff all the time. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. Yeah.
Like, you try to kind of set like a good role model for her by kind
Yeah.
of being like a friend to her while still obviously being, I'm sure, a disciplinarian who, like, in her life still kind of tells her what to do, gives her guidance, but you also want to just be friendly enough to her that she sees you as like not just strictly somebody who just tells her what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And just trying to set a good example too. I think meeting my wife was a huge part in my life. Like, it settled me down. She would tell me, like, being an asshole, or just, like, she picked up on signs, me, like, just having some sort of mental issue, and, like, I think she would notice that and kind of help me through it. So, like, with her, it was quite a change in my life. Like, there was definitely had more to live for and was definitely in a happier spot, because I love her tons. Like, I owe her a lot, and she helped me a lot with that. And then, I'd say probably about 8 years ago, I don't know if you can have like a relapse of depression, but something happened with my daughter, and I, like, totally reset my mind. Like, I lost my mind. I was very upset, very, like, mad. Like, I wasn't mad at, like, my family or anything like that. I was more upset at myself, and I figured that out through therapy again. So I started going back to therapy again, like real therapy, not just like school stuff.
Like this, what is your real first time actually sitting down with a therapist as opposed to like the
Yeah, like a
counselors
real therapist. Yeah, not like the counselors at school that talk to you with puppets and shit like that. It was like real therapy, because then I started, like, I was just getting mad. I'd get mad at people at the grocery store. Somebody, because I had lost my mind. Like, I was just so frustrated with life. I felt like I had totally failed at, like, protecting my family and stuff like that. And I was in a really bad spot. And my wife suggested, this, and then she, like, finding a therapist, and then she just, like, basically lined it up for me, because I almost needed that. So I thank her. I don't think I've ever thanked her, but I guess if she's listening to this, yes, thank you for setting that, because she knew exactly what the right thing to do was, and she did it. She set it up and just said, go here, call this number, set up appointment, go. And sometimes, especially with stubborn old bastards like myself, like, you almost need somebody to do that. So I finally, it's like, she made it easy for me, so I didn't have an excuse. And so I went, and thank God I did, because she really calmed me down. We found the right balance of, like, therapy and medication. It was a great therapist. Like, she wouldn't, like, take my shit. She'd swear at me occasionally if I was just, like, sitting there being a lump on a couch. She'd drag it out of me and stuff. And yeah, I highly recommend it to people, like, especially if you're going through something that really bad. Like, it helps a lot. Like, a lot. So anybody who's like, oh, I'll go to therapy, it's for pussies, like, fuck off. Like, it helps so much. And I can't recommend it enough for people. Like, even if you're not going through anything, even if you just think you need somebody to talk to, it's like one of the greatest things you can do for yourself. Because she found this balance of, she said, you got to take care of yourself too. You got to take care of your marriage, and you got to take care of your kids, but you got to find that right balance. So after the stuff had happened, we weren't like, it was like, I was afraid to be like a town over from where my daughter was. Like, I was like, I have to be there just in case, and I'd have anxiety attacks and stuff like that. And after a while of talking to her, we started talking about, like, what are your worst possible things, and stuff like that. And she got me put on the right track for sure. And told me, like, you gotta take your time with just your wife, too. So we started going on more, like, dates, just the two of us. Because, when you have kids, it's not always easy to just go on dates on yourself. So that helped a lot. And it helped our relationship a lot at the time. So it was definitely a big positive that came out of that for sure.
And prior to that, so while you kind of had a little bit of experience with the counselors when you were younger, you had alluded earlier to the fact that, like, it wasn't until later on this therapist, I'm assuming, with this therapist that you worked with, that she made you realize you were going through depression in high school, but you didn't recognize it as depression at the time.
Yeah.
So was this really your first time in your life that you, like, faced the idea that, hey, I have mental health problems and they're just like any other diagnosis that you get from a doctor? It's something that could be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Or prior to that, you never, like, did you ever recognize having mental health issues?
I think I recognized it because I think I saw it a lot around me too, through some of my family members and stuff. But I didn't take it serious, I guess. Like, you think you just have a case of being sad, or like just not caring, Like, there was times I wasn't ever really suicidal, but I was like, it didn't matter to me, like, if I was alive or not. Like, I just didn't care. And that's definitely more than just a case of being sad or something, So I just wasn't recognizing it in myself. I would see it in other people, but I just didn't. Because I think I'm kind of an empath or whatever they want to call it, like, where I can see things in other people, but I don't look inward all that often. So it definitely helped. That's where therapy helped too, was to be able to look inside more.
A lot of awareness then.
Yeah. I definitely became a lot more aware of, like, what I was doing, how I was feeling, how I was acting.
Was that awareness almost like negative or bad at first because you're aware of things that you never were aware of and now you have to deal with them?
Yeah. It's tough. It's definitely tough at first because you almost feel like, God, I'm a shitty person, for feeling this, that, and a lot of therapy is, I guess she was working with the understanding that it's not just you, like, there's a lot of people who go through this, and your first steps through it aren't going to be easy, but it really pays off in the end because you can't really know what the problem is without knowing what the problem is. It's just that journey through therapy, and it definitely helped for sure.
Yeah. So through all that time working with a therapist, so you said it was about like 8 years ago, right? Like somewhere around that. Would you say, like, your relationship with your wife improved? Did your relationship with the kids improve as well?
Yep.
Out of that?
For sure.
Okay.
For sure. It definitely improved with my son too, because some things were frustrating for me too, and I'm sure they were for him too in some of our communication styles. Because I'm very much a Mr. Fix-It, like, whatever happens, I have to fix it. I have to address it, but I also have to know why something happened and stuff, and that's not always the best thing. Like, if your kid has a problem with something, badgering them with the why questions isn't great. And that's what I was doing. So she made me realize that why do you have to know why? Why do you have to understand why your kid did something stupid? Like, just help them get through it and help them to not do it again, kind of thing. It definitely helped that. My wife said she could definitely tell the difference, like, when I started. So we had to find a balance of medication and stuff too that kind of all mixed in with the therapy itself. And once we hit the sweet spot, my wife was like, yeah, you can definitely tell you're, like, in a way better spot than you were.
Did you used to look at, like, the anger you had in your earlier 20s almost like a personality type? Like, I'm just an angry person.
Yeah, a lot of it I thought was, well, that's how my biological dad was. It's, like, very temperamental. So I'm like, I had to have gotten it from him, And some of it might have, but some of it could have just been on me taking care of myself too.
So like nowadays when something happens at once, like that, something that would have triggered a really angry response back when you were younger, how do you find like that train of thought goes through your head now?
It definitely goes through different. I'm definitely more relaxed than I used to be, and that's where some of that medication stuff definitely helps too, is that slows down those responses a little bit, and also just like more coping mechanisms. Like, just I can almost talk myself through situations and get so much practice that I can do it pretty quickly. And especially with people, if I'm out in the garage, something bangs my hand, I'm still gonna throw a wrench. Like I'm not that fast at it.
Yeah.
Like I could definitely, with people and stuff, I'm definitely feel like I'm more understanding of stuff, and I kind of force myself into these situations, like inside my head. Like if somebody's pissing me off or something, I can put myself in their shoes a lot better and try to understand their side a lot better than it used to be, for sure.
Since being in therapy too, how did that change the way that you would look at any of your past? Like look at your biological father or your mother or even your stepdad, and even some of the issues that they went through. You know, your stepdad who's your dad now, he had his bout, what you kind of said, with some alcoholism. So obviously, like now as being older, you probably can look at that and say, well, he probably had mental health problems. He coped using alcohol and had to learn how to not cope using alcohol. Like, how does that change like some of the way you'd look on the past?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely changes it. I have my limits, though, where I think if you do something bad enough, you can no longer blame it on that. But yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of stuff, especially with, like, my dad adopted me, was a veteran and stuff like that. And so you can see, like, some of the forces, and I don't mean everybody, but, like, some of them turn out a lot of people who end up drinking a lot, and being on drugs a lot and stuff like that. So, like, I can understand that, like, the stress of going through, service and stuff like that can definitely do that. So I like can try to put myself in other people's situations. I don't know if that's what happened, like, at all. This is just pure speculation, but yeah, I think it definitely helps understand why some people act the way they do, for sure, especially in the past. And then, yeah, understanding myself too, like going back to the situations so I ended up being diagnosed with like 2 episodes of PTSD, and I can definitely look back on those better now after therapy than I could before that, because I don't think I handled at all before that. When I'd think about them, I'd be super mad. Now I can think about it and go on with my day, put my mind on something else. Not go through that whole thing again.
Because you've learned how to more emotionally regulate yourself.
Yeah.
Keep
for
yourself
sure.
in a baseline more often.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think I'm just a better human being in general. Not saying I'm winning any awards, but definitely in a lot better spot than I was, for sure.
And like, how many years have you now been coming to Winner's Edge?
4, roughly.
Okay.
3.5, 4 years.
Would you say that was like another big improvement for you when you started working out consistently?
Yes, for sure. And it's this place definitely gives you more of a sense of community. So we moved here 4.5 years ago. Just didn't know anybody
From
all.
That is, right?
No, so we lived in Monroe, Wisconsin.
Okay.
For 10 years before moving here. So yeah, when we moved out here, I just didn't know anybody, nobody to talk to, nothing like that. So where I worked and you worked at the time, I'd drive past here every day, and finally one day I just pulled in and started coming, and yeah, it helps. Physical exertion, I think, helps a lot with mental issues, I guess. You just find a way to work some things out, and then Kirk is so nice. Don't ever tell anybody I said he was nice, but he talks to you every day. He's a good friend. He seems to really care that, or he's good at acting like shit, but he just having somebody to talk to helps a lot. And then there's also this community at the gym where you meet a lot of friends and you start talking and people hang out. You can go grab a beer with somebody or something. I think it definitely helped me a lot because I think I started to feel pretty isolated again after moving and just like, was like, well, what do I do now? You know, your work day would end and you're like, I'm going home now. But you started coming here and it was like, okay. And then we do activities too and stuff. So it was nice for sure.
Are there any big things that you think you'd like wish you could go back and tell your younger self with some of the things you've learned, the lessons you've learned, the coping strategies you've learned?
Yes, for sure. The coping stuff. And for sure, like opening myself up to, you know, different things and listening to people. Because I think my thoughts on therapy when I was younger are just dumb, but it was like, you know, they didn't live what I lived. How are they supposed to know, you know, how to get through some of this stuff? And that was always kind of my thing. I realized later on how stupid that was. Like, I should have allowed myself to be more open earlier. I really wish I had done that all the time. Because I'd be a lot further along on my, I guess, mental health journey than I am now if I had not been so stubborn when I was younger.
Like prior to therapy, did you feel like there was growth just from, say, like being married, like getting married and having to like live with somebody every day where you had to care for somebody else's emotions every day, care about how they felt, not just yourself, kind of get outside your own head more often. Do you feel like was there growth for you there?
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously you kind of allude a lot to like your wife is like very positive impact on your life.
Yeah, for sure. She was definitely like, I mean, that was definitely big in my life. Like, it did just as much for me as therapy did too, was just having somebody to be accountable for and to was like life changing because up until then I could just kind of do whatever I wanted, you know, and not care. And now it was like you were saying, like you care about somebody else. You want what's best for them too, not just yourself. So I think that helps you mature a lot too. Because then you got to start planning too. Kids, do you not want kids? Where do you want to live? Where do you want to be in your career? It's not just your career, it's somebody else's too. So you kind of, and I started to take myself much more lightly, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like I was pretty serious at work, and I'd start getting mad because things were going my way, or I'd stay working late. It was all about work, trying to make more money at work and trying to move up at work. And then I realized, like, what am I doing all this for? Like, you take more time for yourself and somebody else too. Or just, I think it just made my work-life balance way better too, having somebody else around.
And how did that change too with the fact that like you had your adopted son right away, and then having your daughter as well, which, you know, I guess was enough years later, but like, so you kind of even had the responsibility of like a kid right away.
Yeah.
Cause I feel like that could be such a jump as well in life. I feel like those are like two big jumps, right?
Yeah.
Getting married and then having a kid.
Yeah.
Of like having to mature and like look past yourself more often.
Yeah. It was definitely like, it wasn't just like an immediate change. That definitely took some getting used to. It didn't take like a super long time, but it's just, you definitely have to adjust because you just don't, I think anytime you become a parent, you have to slowly adjust because nobody knows what to do right away. You know, it's kind of a thing you have to learn as you go. I think because you listen to people's advice and nobody's advice is ever good. Like you always just kind of have to, and I don't mean that in general, but you know, every kid is their own person. So whatever advice you get to always apply. And same for as the parent, you're your own person too. So it wasn't like I could hear all the advice in the world, but that still wasn't going to prepare me that well for what I had to do. We were both figuring each other out. So it definitely takes some time for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Especially that the fact that the ship doesn't happen too fast, but you obviously still feel like there is the immediate feeling like things need to change, and you can only change so fast, and your body, you want to have resistance to it because you've lived so many years a certain way.
Yeah.
And now you have to change the way you live, the way you think about stuff. That probably has its own positive impacts without a doubt, I'm sure.
Yes, for sure. It definitely does. I mean, yeah, with kids especially, you do a lot more looking inside yourself and like realizing how your parents were and how you want to be as a parent. And I think you do really change your personality depending on how you're going to raise your kid. Be a wild partier and or be a temperamental asshole like me, and like then you have kids and you realize, oh yeah, you can't really do that anymore. Like you have to be a good example, So it definitely does change.
And ever since you kind of learned everything through therapy, how do you feel like? Do you feel like you try to not push, but like give more advice to your son now, as he's kind of in those years of, he was in his late teens, now he's early 20s. He's probably going through some of the things that you've been through during that period of time, in the sense of like like boy angst that we get when we're young, right? Do you feel like you're able to kind of guide him a little bit better now?
Yeah, I try, but I also try to make sure I step back. Because I do think there was value in me in experiencing some of this stuff kind of on my own and struggling too, that I do want him. You don't want your kids to struggle, but I do want him to struggle some too. I guess I want him to have that, when he gets older, have that feeling of earning it, So I want him to kind of have to face some things on his own, And he's learning that. He's definitely going through it. Like, he'll call and ask for some advice. You give him some advice and hope that he can figure it out. He just had to do his registration in Iowa and stuff like that. I wanted to tell him some, but I also wanted to say maybe try to figure some things out on your own or find somebody who can help you. So luckily my mom retired, so he had her come with him to the office to get it all figured out. But he still learned from it, So it's that fine line of like not hovering over him too much, letting him figure things out on his own, which he kind of is, because learning that a job is not always, consistent, and a paycheck sometimes doesn't come in and stuff like that, So he's getting there. I'm proud of him. He's doing a really good job. He's getting it figured out. It sucks. I know it sucks for him. We all went through it, as young people. But he's I think, learning a lot of it too. So one of those things you just hope they appreciate later.
Yeah, which that he likely will.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, feeling like you earned the things you learned does feel good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I think he'll get that feeling for sure when he gets a little bit older. That whole brain developing until your mid-20s thing it's pretty true. So yeah, and brain keeps developing. You start getting a little bit better understanding all that. So he's learning.
So just kind of like to end things off here, what would be your biggest piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
I think, like before, just be more open, and talk, like being more open by talking to people, talk to your friends. If you need help with something, talk to your friends. It definitely gets better the more open you are. So try not to close yourself off. Figure things out on your own.
Like essentially communicating.
Yeah. I think that definitely helps. That was one of the big keys they hit in therapy, with talking things through more, especially with my wife. I think when I was younger, they probably just said talk more with your friend. I think that helps. I think that might be kind of part of the issue that we're facing now. Not a lot of personal contact, with some younger kids. I wish my son had more close friends, when he was younger to talk to and stuff. Probably would have helped him some. I think that's pretty important for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think some of my biggest growth came through just the fact that my wife will sit there and talk to me for hours on end about stuff, and like she'll let me talk about things in my mind and help me kind of talk through them. And sometimes she'll just sit there and listen, and I'll ask an opinion every once in a while as I'm talking, and she'll give me a little opinion. That alone, I mean, just being able to open up and communicate things out loud, so it's not just rattling around in my brain, that I think is such a massive difference maker.
What do they call it? Ruminating.
Ruminating, yes.
That was one of the big things I learned with my son through family therapy. The word ruminating and how bad it can be. So,
if you got an overactive mind, it probably likes to ruminate.
It does. That's why I'm an insomniac too. So, like, that's what happens to me every night. As soon as my head hits that pillow.
Know your thoughts, yeah.
It's like my head blows up. Yep. So you try to avoid just thinking in your head all the time.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and open up a little bit about your story and telling people about, your journey that you've been through and some of the growth that you've been through. Because I think it's a great story that a lot of people can relate to, and a lot of men especially can relate to, because a lot of 20-year-old guys are angry and don't realize why they're angry. And it takes them a long time to realize that the anger is just it's a symptom of mental health problems that are just not being taken care of.
Yeah.
And I think it's something a lot of guys could really benefit from, opening up, talking more, and eventually seeking therapy to be able to learn those coping strategies.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if you get time, when you do get help from people, make sure to thank them. Like, show your appreciation to people for sure. Like, thank you for talking to me. I also obviously like to thank my friends, who I don't thank enough, for listening to my bullshit too. And obviously I always thank my wife for it anyways.
Yeah, no, that's a great add-on as well. I think showing people appreciation when they're there is the reason that people continue to show up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you'll regret not doing it when you get the chance.
For sure.
For sure. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and tune in for more episodes coming up in the near future. So thank you and have a great day.